Hey everyone, happy Wednesday to you. This is Womanhood Wisdom Wednesday, the G-Spot Live right here in Good Girls Gone Goddess community. And I am always excited to be here. And I don't always say my name because most of you know who I am. But for the purpose of video, I'm LaTanya Taylor, the Rev Coach, the Juicy Spirit Mama, the Priestess of Passion, as some of you all have affectionately called your girl. So I want to continue in our discussion. So many people inboxed me last week to say that they were blessed tremendously for their own personal life around the conversation of are we entitled? And it keeps on coming up because through some of the discussions that we've been having in with individuals and with others as well, even in our processes. So I have to tell you that definitely was an inspired message that blessed me to break through of what I felt entitled to from people I love and people who loved me. Because oftentimes entitlement, this energy of entitlement is hidden. And so that's why, just as a quick overview, I broke it down into 3 levels of entitlement because they don't all mean the same when we look at emotional entitlement and all the way to the actual rights that we have to be entitled to something. A lot of times we might not want to take the time to know. So if you get a chance to look at that video, to understand the context, I want to see who was the first person. I have a little gift for you that I'm going to share with you in just a minute, if you are around. Hey, so Kristen, I have a little gift for you as sisters come in to join. I've invited most of them. I'm just going to do a quick little reading for you. If you will. Thank you for joining. Whoop, whoop. So I'm just going to do a quick little reading for you. So I will share it with you in just a moment. If you're watching, I do just want to go right on into what we've been talking about, just in the spirit of wholeness and growth and personal development and that type of thing. So, when we talked last week around the energy, the spirit of entitlement, it struck people in different places, in different ways. It hit for some people, it was an ouch. For some others, it was an amen. For some, it was like, wow, I never saw how I was carrying that. And I wanted to share with you, hey, how are you doing? I wanted to share with you how I became more aware of this. When we moved to Costa Rica, we did our research on just about everything in terms of the culture, things that aren't always communicated, just to be aware of, because believe it or not, us Americans, even those of us who may not be happy with the state of things in America, when you live abroad, or traveling abroad, you always want to be mindful of a particular culture. And so when we were researching, one of the things that they were telling us is don't come here and expect things to move fast at the standard that you all are used to. We have a very microwave expectation of a lot of things in terms of going out to eat, customer service, and that type of thing. And so one of the things that they were saying in Central America is people, they're not trying to be insulting when they're slow. But Americans will come in and think that the customer service is poor because Hey, thank you for saying hello as you join. Americans will think that the customer service is poor because we're used to going somewhere and somebody coming to you quickly, and so there will be an assumption that once you get your meal, if the waiter doesn't check back with you, that something is wrong, that they're not doing it right. And also, Americans work with a lot of entitlements when it comes to this thing called customer service. And so when we went, we had, knowing that was absolutely true. But the reasons, for instance, in Costa Rica or Central America, that they're not constantly on you is in their culture, they consider that a nuisance, that they don't want to be a nuisance. They want you to be able to enjoy your meal. So when people go out to have a meal, they actually leave space for you to have conversation, and they check on you sparingly. But the idea is that they want to please you. Costa Ricans in particular. I won't say that for all of Central America, but Costa Ricans, ideally, they want to please you. And so here, if you're an American and you're going somewhere and they're not operating according to the standards of your country, then oftentimes it becomes an issue. So Americans will have nasty attitudes, they won't tip, or they make nasty comments to the owner because they didn't get an American service, even though they're in Central America. So that was another way for me to become aware of entitlements and reprogramming myself to slow down and to adjust, because it was a good thing. Because yes, it was definitely different. That you go out, and only the restaurants that were chain or franchises from America did they try to keep up that American standard. But when you went somewhere to an authentic Tico location, it wasn't like that. You sat down to have your meal. And so another example that when we start talking about culture is a lot of times when we start to interact in a relationship, you may be used to things being done in a certain kind of way in your household, in your culture, in your environment. And then you marry or live with a significant other, and you, for instance, if you grow up, good afternoon, if you grow up in a household where the kids basically they cleaned up, they didn't have a past, like there was no maid or a grandmother or some type of thing. Michelle is sending love to everybody in the space. And when you get together, you may be mated with someone who they grew up where only the women wash dishes, and maybe the boys got passes. They might have taken out a trash. So now you come together with the beloved, and they have some because another word for entitlement is expectations. And sometimes when we have not communicated our expectations, the entitlements are buried in our subconscious mind, and it has an energy. Social media also has come with certain entitlements as well, at least false entitlements. So I'm just talking about false entitlements and being able to shift some of these. Because last week when I said, maybe I should talk about when you are a taker or a giver in a space. And I'm going to get to that. And so social media now comes with some entitlements. People who, if I like your post, if I show up, if I'm commenting, if I'm showing up for you, after a while, a person may feel like, well, damn, they never come over to my page. They never look at what I'm doing. And so, there's that. And then now with us having Messenger, I don't know if you all have seen it, but a lot of people have really been posting about this thing with Messenger where people are just sending you chain messages, and they are and they're not saying hello or how are you doing. So you have an entitlement. You're coming in my inbox and you're saying, you at least you could say hello. That's an expectation. But the thing is, people who don't know how to really use Facebook, you have elders now who legitimately are business owners, but they're not good with social media. That's who I see doing a lot of it. Elders who, like, they just send you whatever, chain mail, chain messages, and that type of thing. And the way this thing is set up, like, your entitlements will have you taking so many things personal. Is where I'm getting to. But when you sense that you're taking something personal, or that you are judging what should be or what shouldn't be without doing some investigation or having the courage to ask or to inquire or to check in on yourself, you walk around with all of these hidden entitlements, and you find yourself angry, your feelings hurt, you find yourself in situations where you expected one thing and then another thing is being given. And so in your mind, sometimes a person could be falling short of what you expected, yet you never communicated or did your due diligence in certain instances. But what about being able to shift? Because when we come together in terms of dream work, they say teamwork makes the dream work. When we start coming together, you start to find out how you can't be isolated. You can't be in an island. And so a lot of times we come into spaces with the energy of a taker and not a giver. So where do we learn that? Where did we get that type of programming and information from? And I would like to offer that we get it oftentimes from religion or from church or from childhood or whatever is at the root of it. Because particularly when it comes to religion, many of us have been conditioned to go to church to get something. I got to go get my blessing. I got to go get my breakthrough. And so when you don't go to church, you hear elders say things like, you baby, you ain't gonna be blessed because you ain't been going to church. When the last time you been to church? You know, I used to hear that. And the energy and the spirit probably is coming from intentionally, or started off coming from the place of when there's something magical that happens when we come together in a group. There's something magical that happens when we are all having the same intention, and when we bring our energy, our vibratory fields begin to rise, not just by ourselves, but what happens is when my vibratory field in essence begins to expand and to be turned all the way on, and then you're next to someone else whose vibratory field now is going off, and so you create a force field of energy through your fellowship. You create a force field of energy through praise and worship or whatever it is that you're doing. So you create this force field of energy when you come together. But what happens is dogma will have you thinking that I can't get that unless I show up there. So I don't show up in other places. I don't study other religions. I don't study other cultures. I think that the only way for me to access God or my God essence or my divinity or my blessings and my manifestation is just when I go to that church that my grandmama and them went to. And I said grandmama and them intentionally. So we get this idea that when we come into a space, we're coming in to get something all of the time. So you have people who, you know, I have a standard here in Good Girls Gone Goddess. When you come into the space, we welcome you. You introduce yourself into the space, because it's just like entering into someone's house. So it's my expectation that when you come into a space, when you walk, it's the same way. Now, how would you feel if you're hosting a dinner party or you're hosting something and people walk into the room and they don't speak to anyone? They just come. And so now you have this thing, even in our social media consciousness, where and some people still do it in real life. I'm just going to go in and sit at the back of the church. I'm just going to go in and I ain't saying nothing. I'm going to chill. I'm going to lay low. Now, sometimes that is wisdom. Sometimes, you have to see. But at the same time, What if we came in with our cup full into spaces? Now, or is the state of womanhood that critical that most of us are walking around empty? And when I say empty, I mean with unmet needs. We have unmet needs, and so our emptiness has us coming with a cup, saying, here, I'm here, fill my cup. I want you to fill my cup. And if you do not fill my cup such that it's overflowing, you have failed me. But what about when you say, my cup is empty, I don't know how to fill it, and I'm willing to ask you, how can I begin to fill my cup? Because the greatest thing is you could teach a man how to fish, or you can just go fish for the man. And so the difference is between being a consumer, being the lender, and not the borrower. So what's the difference? It's my intention. Because if you're going to every Sunday to church or to the mosque and you're empty from one week to the next, then there's something else going on. There's something else going on. Maybe there's a crack in your cup. Maybe there's a crack in your cup, or maybe the water that you are filling it with, or the juice or the liquid that you have been filling in your cup is not hydrating. See, because many of us, you all know, when you start talking about hydration, you will have symptoms of being thirsty for something. And when you're thirsty, you're subject to drink anything. So if you go get a soda, or if you go get some juice, I love a good blend of some juice. And, like one of my favorite drinks is a nice ginger drink, or some nice sorrel and ginger. Like, I love the island flavors in a drink. And so maybe I will go and that will quench my thirst for a moment, but I'm going to be thirsty again because it did not hydrate me. If I don't get water or get something that is designed to hydrate me and give me the nutrients and the minerals, I'm going to find myself with an empty cup all the time. And some of us have empty cups all the time because we have cracks in our foundation that was created by trauma. Many of us have had trauma in our lives that we've never gotten treated, that we've never received any healing from. And when I'm talking about healing, I am talking about a healing bomb. So we're walking around looking for anything to fill our cup. Not anything in the sense that you shouldn't search. Keep your cup. You are entitled to have a cup that you get. And sometimes when you may want a little juice over here, sometimes you want a beverage, but you're not looking to be hydrated. Having a beverage is a little bit different than when you are looking to hydrate yourself and quench your thirst. Because one thing that's guaranteed, if we keep on living, we're going to need to hydrate ourselves again. And so the other thing is, a lot of times, once we've done our work, we have a secret entitlement that we've imposed upon ourselves. I shouldn't be dealing with this. I've been dealing with this for 20 years. I attended this workshop about this situation, and so something must be wrong. I ain't doing nothing no more. And so we become very hard on ourselves as women with the expectation that, okay, so I thought I dealt with this. Well, guess what? You're worth it. You are entitled to you, and you are entitled to keep on going and getting whatever it is you need. Even when it doesn't quench you the first time, you go and you get something else, or you come back. Here's my cup again. That's one of my favorite songs to send myself into meditation, the way CeCe Winans sings it. Fill my cup, Lord. I empty it out, Lord. Fill my cup. Because oftentimes when we are looking for something from someone else, even our husbands, and they can only give you at their level of capacity, right? But our capacity continues to increase when we begin to go from the spirit of entitlement, which means that I want you to give me because you owe me. it's different than just having a right. Now there, because now mind you, I'm talking about on the spiritual, the emotional, and the personal development level. Last week, I talked about, also I dropped a lot in on law, actual law and land rights and that type of thing that we are entitled to based on our nationality and who we are. That's a bit of a different discussion because there are levels to law. See, we have spiritual law, we have jurisprudence. There are levels to law, and then there's cosmic law. And so right now I'm talking about on the very basic level. And so what happens is, we were, a lot of times what I'm presenting is coming from a leadership conversation, right? Peace and blessings upon him, EBA Ron Davis, because he is one of my trainers. And I used to, even though some of you study with Ron, I used to have, I felt like he was preparing me on another level, because I used to get up like early in the morning and we would have like conversations about things that intellectually I understood, but in my life, I wasn't necessarily ready to implement at that level at that time, but he taught me anyway. And as for the group, there's a process where, now when I say this, understand that there's a context for leading to this. So, some people feel entitled to come in and watch everything that you do and then go back and try to implement what you're doing, and they haven't done the process or the work. So I'm doing a disclaimer before I say this, but I want you to use your mind's eye and imagine that you've been in a group training, you've gone through several levels of ahas, awarenesses, and different things in the training. And there's a place where we had two lines, and you had to go through the line and stand face to face with the person on the other side of you. And you literally would answer, was the person a giver or a taker? And sometimes people who you thought might see you as a giver would say taker. Or you would hear someone say, giver, how did you feel? How did you feel about yourself because mind you, a person's perception is their perception. Feedback is neutral, but oftentimes we take feedback to be personal, and so we begin to defend it as if someone is coming against us. So what this was a part of being able to be a leader in your life first and be able to hear feedback. And if it resonated with you that this was something that you needed to improve, but it was amazing to process afterwards how many people receive majority taker, majority giver. And oftentimes when I come into spaces of empowerment or spaces where we are in intention, because of that, now I come into these spaces now, like with that mindset that when I'm just a greeting is to come in to say this is an offering, just to speak, to engage. How can I be present here? What is it? Not just what is it that I want to receive, but what is it that I want to give? Because then you shift from seeing yourself in deficit. So no matter what it is that you are going through, or no matter what it is that you are learning or adjusting, when you shift the mindset from being in deficit, then you can see yourself as being a meaningful contribution to any space that you go into, even on social media. It doesn't mean that you come in with an agenda. You don't come in just to promote your thing. You don't come in just so you can take it and then use it, repackage it under your name, under your ministry, under your thing. And that's theft. That's stealing. But when you come in from the space of this, there is value here, and I am valuable, and I'm going to also bring value. You shift from a place of lack consciousness and deficit into a place of collaboration and partnership. And many people, even when it comes to social media, if they have a large following, they don't feel like they need to engage. They don't feel like they need to like anybody's posts, or they don't have to do that. And that's a big, when it comes to business, that especially if you're in any kind of social business, the whole point of social media is absolutely engagement. The point is to engage on a social level, not just to promote what it is you're doing. So sometimes it is a conversation. Do you have to have a conversation with the 5,000 people on your friends list? No. But if they come on your page and you want to be able to engage. So these are little subtle ways. Now I want to shift a little bit to the most, it may seem like something really low budget for those of us who are growing forth in Goddess, but we are still operating in the world. So how many of you all saw this Kevin Hart and Nico Hart situation? Just put a 1 in the comments if you saw that. Put a 1 in the comments if you saw the Kevin Hart and Nico Hart, the whole scandal around the sex tape. I'm going to wait on you. I'm going to wait on you. Because the biggest entitlement, if you saw the Kevin Hart and Nico Hart situation, where he was caught, he came out, he knew that it was coming, and he came out and he did a public apology because he said he was caught in a compromising situation that he shouldn't have been in, which was code word that it was a sex tape coming out. So the sex tape came out, it made its way to the airwaves, and people are going off about it, right? Because Kevin Hart's wife was allegedly the side piece, or the one of the side pieces when he was married to Tori Hart. And so, you know, Tori, that was a controversial matter as well. The way his marriage ended with Tori Hart, and then he was with Aniko during their marriage. Now, Aniko Hart says that, and the reason why I say allegedly, she says that once she was dealing with Kevin, but he had told her that she wasn't married. He wasn't married. So when she found out he was still married, she immediately ended the relationship. But nevertheless, Tori and other people say that's not true. She was still with him. So there's bad blood, and then they settled it and they became a blended family, and then something popped off recently. Well, Kevin Hart is really just a prototype. And women are really women who've been cheated on or been in marriages where there's been extramarital affairs and that type of thing have had a lot to say. And I often find it interesting how we view situations like this. Oftentimes when you're single and you are looking to attract a mate, but these kind of things become Facebook posts and a whole bunch of things that we start giving our attention through Facebook posts and debates. All men are dogs. Can't trust them niggas. That kind of commentary about certain things. Then there's a whole commentary of him being a celebrity, right? So have you even taken a moment to see what are some of the things that you feel entitled to in a marriage? Because oftentimes we still are functioning in marriages and relationships with a deficit consciousness, and we don't know the rules of the game for the wealthy. What I mean by that is, this is not new. Kevin Hart had, I don't know how many blogs shut down with the kind of team that he had, because he was trying to get in front of this stuff. He didn't want it out there. He did it. I saw the tape. Yes, I did. You can't deny it. You can't deny it. It wasn't one woman. It was two women humping, moaning, groaning, all of that. So he's trying to get in front of that. And a lot of times we make judgments not knowing, like even with Steve Harvey, he's a machine. He's a media Hey, love, he's a media machine. And so I wasn't even aware. Did you all know that some of these celebrities, when they have a scandal, that they'll call ahead to blogs and tell them that they better not post it? They threaten the blogs and literally threaten to have them shut down. It's really been very interesting because we're living in this culture where so many things get exposed and you learn the underpinnings of all of the different things that are happening behind the scenes, and you'll be in a tizzy defending situations and not even knowing what's going on, or have yourself in in a tizzy. What do you think, Aniko Hart? Did she feel entitled that because she was with Kevin early on, she stuck by him while he was married, he wouldn't do it to her? Did she feel entitled? What do you think she's processing right now with the level of embarrassment that she probably is? Imagine if that was your husband. And so, yeah, you could be, to do the song, Stand By My Man. That's another type of entitlement. You know what I'm saying? But and now Tori Hart, people are going to Tori Hart, and she recently just did an interview, and people have an opinion about where she should be, and she should be over it by now. Why is she still talking about a marriage she's not in? Well, when she talked about it, everybody thought she was lying. Everybody felt like, and so is she entitled to share how she feels? These are ways for us sometimes, instead of having attachment spirits, for us to really look and dive into what is it that we want to create in our relationships. Because your relationship doesn't have to look like Kevin Hart's, Steve Harvey's, Jay-Z and Beyonce, these celebrity people, Lord. It doesn't have to look like your pastors. It doesn't have to look like that, because if you don't know those people, you don't really know what it is that they are working through just to wake up to each other every day. You don't know what their agreements were when they came in, hidden or spoken or unspoken. Because sometimes there are marriages that look like one thing to the public, and you don't know what their agreement is behind closed door. You know that there's different types of marriages. That, you know, monogamy is something that is assumed, that should be the standard. However, how about polyamory? How about concubines? Because wealthy men, oftentimes we want a wealthy man, but do you understand some of the things that go along with being his wife? Because there's different rules. And then we could go to the level of the feminine and understand that there's an archetype for every woman. And the whore archetype is an archetype that oftentimes the priestess not all priestesses are afraid of. So if you have more of a Mary archetype than and you're not comfortable with all the archetypes of your feminine, the whore archetype will make you very afraid, because you don't know your rightful entitlements. Because these false emotional ones are the ones that we often give the energy to, and we won't process through what it is that we need to change. So it can shift from entitlement to enrichment. And I wanted to give you a quick little definition. Nope, I'm gonna put on these glasses really quickly. And enrichment, I love this because it's a noun and it's also a verb, but it's the action of improving or enhancing the value or the quality of something. Enrichment. It also is the process of making someone wealthier, or yes, someone wealthy or wealthier. Enrichment. And oftentimes when we're functioning in false, emotional, over-exaggerated entitlements, they are coming from deficit and lack. But when we switch to enrichment, there's a level of participation in your process that expands and shifts you from lack consciousness into wealth consciousness. This is one of the reasons why I said on one of my recordings, one of my videos, I think it's on YouTube now, how can somebody cheat on you if you're not cheating on yourself? And so when you walk around saying he cheated, she cheated. Who? Because somebody who cheats, they cheat themselves. But the thing that we get to ask ourselves are, if we're in relationship with someone, we are entitled to the truth. Yes. We're entitled to operate in agreement. And when the terms of the agreement shift, we get to, the two parties get to, or three parties if that's how you do it, or four parties if you're into the poly thing. But if the terms of the agreement shift from when we started, whether it's friends, whether it's lovers, or whether it's mates, if the terms of the agreements have shifted, then we got to come back to the table. That's different than coming from the place of, you, because I'm your wife, you owe me what? Truth. So what we really are offended by a lot of times is the lie, or the pedestal that we place people on. You all know that this entitlement conversation goes so deep to the point where a lot of women feel entitled to certain things from men because you still have men on a pedestal higher than you, based off of that old programming that men are stronger, better, and should be this or that. And so therefore now, because you're the woman, you get entitled to being the victim of when situations don't work out in relationship. Rather, in the difference from when you entitle something, even in law, you move it out of the name of someone else or something else into your name. And guess what happens when you move it out of your name, out of the name or the title of something or someone else and into your name or the entity that you control? It's called ownership. So the only way to get to enrichment, to make someone wealthier, to add value, is to move from entitled to owner. When I own all of it, I am the creator of my reality. So if it's showing up in my reality, if I'm triggered by it, then how do I get to look at it to own even the trigger? It's my trigger. They didn't make me this way. They didn't make me that way. It's my trigger. So rather than going back into entitlement about other people need to change, other people should do it this way, other people should show up this way, when I move it into ownership out of the name, their name, because see, if it's in their name, I really don't have any rights to it. But when I move something, come on now, this is why we go to closing. If any of you have ever owned a house or a property, even when you read the rights of a will, when somebody leaves you an inheritance, then there's a process of acquisition where you got to move it out of this estate into your estate. And so then you become the owner of it, and you now can call it. That's what being a reality creator is. If I can own it, all of it. And see, that's on the individual level. But guess what happens now when we start to look at the collective level? If I see storms happening, if I see the earth is crying out, I can own that too, because there's a part of me that has hurricanes and tornadoes and unspoken unhappiness and upsets with the way this world operates. When I look at the feminine beyond myself, when I look at the feminine beyond I want a man, when I look at the feminine beyond I need a better job, when I look at the feminine beyond I just have this baby, and so I'm responsible for this baby. No, I am the queen mother, especially melanated women. And so when you look at them people out there with their white sheets on, and I'm not going to get into no race wars conversation, because if I believe I am who I say I am, then I can own all of it, because they are my children. They are my children. And so my children have to come by me. They got to come by me. And when you walk into rooms now like that, as the queen mother, when you begin to see that that's not just that woman over there, that's my sister. I am my sister's keeper, I'm not my sister's keeper. And many of us think that being our sister's keeper is holding on to her madness, holding on to her gossip, holding on to her worries and her affairs. That's why it says I'm not my sister's keeper. I am my sister. Because when I see something that happens with another woman on any level, I can see it in me. Because if I can spot it, I've got it. Some of you have been the other woman. Own that. It pisses you off because a lot of you that's a wife now, you're afraid that that what I did when I was the other woman might come back to me now that I'm the wife. Come on now. When you can own it, you can shift it. And now it can become enriching. And if you ain't never been the other woman, then don't trip. If you've never been the other woman, you can't talk about it. You don't really have an opinion on it. You can only come from a fear-based conversation. But why are so many people triggered? Because they've been the side piece. and they had expectations of the side piece. But instead of keeping it in the name of Tori Hart and Kevin Hart and then Nico Hart and Steve Harvey and Margie Harvey and this one and that one, and then I move it into my name, into ownership. When I move it into ownership, wait a minute, that was my stuff one day. You know, people who are not walking in guilt and shame about what it is that they have done, at a certain point, you can own that thing. Yeah, I did it. Yes, Lord, I did it, and I did it good when I did it. Because at a certain point, when you can bless your mess, when you can look at your mess and say, damn, that was messy. But now I can bless it. Oh my God, I went through that and I'm out of it. Look at what the lessons that I learned. But many of us are still trying to cover it up, cover it over, and be so righteous and so pious. And then we're walking around in fear because I don't want it to come to me. I don't want what I did to come back to me. Or we're carrying the water of our parents. Maybe your mother got cheated on. I know mine did. And remember, I don't technically use that word, so I'm using it in the vernacular of what we understand. And you are still carrying the water of your mother or your mother's mother. Or maybe they divorced and it's still in the name of my mama and daddy divorce. But when you move it over into ownership of, wait a minute, because my mama and my daddy divorced, now I'm a little afraid that the heartbreak. But first you got to deal with the heartbreak. So when you move it over out of the name of my mama and my daddy's hurt, my mama and my daddy's issues, my mama and my daddy's breakdown into, but here's where my heart was broken. Now you can own it. And then you can move from ownership into enrichment. Enrichment. Y'all feel me on that? So the shift is when you can spot it, you've got it. So while walking around here looking at everybody else's faults and the way that they should do it, and it's sideline hustling. I can coach from the sideline, but unless I get in the game and I take on a position and play in a position in the game of my life, as long as I'm quarterbacking in the benches, then I can say what play Drew Brees should have ran. I can say what play Tom Brady should have ran. I can talk about what the wide receiver. I'm just using football because I like football, even though I'm not watching it right now. I do like football. I'm not that good with basketball, and I don't know nothing much about tennis, but I do like to watch. But as long as I'm sideline hustling and in the bench calling, I'm entitled. I'm entitled. Why? You are entitled to your opinion because you're a fan and you brought a ticket. That's how we do with many things. I'm entitled to have an opinion about how you should do it. But do you have a tithe and offering? A tithe and offering is different than just purchasing a ticket, because many of us, we pay our way through many things. You pay your way through church. You pay your way through the workshop. But do you show up in the workshop? Because your tithe and offering is not just where you put your money. I put my money into it, and so I ought to get this. But what about it when you go, when your child is at school? You send your child to the private school, but do you show up for the private conversations with the instructor? Do you sit down with your child and you study with them, even if you don't know the material? No, it's easier if I go make some more money. Many of us are in this mind. Let me go make some more money so that somebody can take care of what it is that I am responsible for. See, oh God, I just got another hit on that right there. Let me fan myself. They are here. They are present. Let me fan myself. And so many of us are walking around and the things that we already own is in our name. That's what they said to me. Tell them this. There are some things that are already is already in our name, but we still keep trying to put the entitlement over in the name of somebody else that they don't own it. It's your child. You understand what I'm saying? It's your cross to bear. It's your call. It's the call on your life. Not your mama's life, not your husband's life, and you're still waiting for somebody to catch up to you, but you are the one who said yes to the call. And the call is not always just no ministry and no microphone. It's not always that. It's how can I show up behind the scenes when nobody is looking? Because let me tell you something about the goddess. When I talk about becoming the priestess of your household, when you become the priestess of your household, that means that there are some rituals you got to do every day. There's some things that you got to do every day. That means that when the storms of life are raging, when the storms are moving on the ocean, you got to know. And if you don't know what to do, you get in proximity to someone who does. And so sometimes what happens is we want to be the priestess, but we don't want the weight and the ownership. So we still want to entitle it in the name of Oshun. We want to entitle it in the name of Yemiyah. We want to entitle it in the name of this goddess. I'm Aphrodite. But you understand, but you still got a problem with sexuality. You can't be Aphrodite and Oshun and you still go walking over there. You still got it in their name. But when you move it over to my name, you see, because it's just like Jesus, baby, wrapped up, tied up, tangled up in Jesus. You got to understand that even if it's Jesus was the Christ, well, okay, so if it's still in Jesus' name, I'm doing everything in Jesus' name. But what about my name? Is there power in my name? Is there power in ownership? Not the entitlement. Let me move it out of the entitlement into the ownership. And out of the ownership becomes my enrichment. I'm enriched through everything that I walk through. Everything. But when you're in the mindset of deficit thinking, deficit consciousness, lack consciousness, we're walking around feeling like somebody owes us something. And that's a different spirit. It's a different spirit. I just want to say this because I'm not looking at all the comments right now, but I just gotta shout out my pastor sisters because they come in here and they don't have to come and watch my lives, but when there's a spirit that they don't have a spirit of entitlement that I'm pastor, so I can't go and I can't support my sister. But see, when we walk around with that spirit of entitlement, we can't hear and we cannot receive. And so, Lord, have mercy. I said I wasn't going to be long, but listen, y'all got me? This 3-part process that I'm talking about. When you move it out of the name, I don't care if you buying something, if you purchasing a property, you can't take ownership. You can't get the keys to the property until you move it into the name that is yours. That it is significant that we understand ownership, but we would rather not own it because we only want to own the light and not the dark. Well, you cannot be the priestess of your household when you are still just trying to do light and love, because there's a shadow that all of us get to own. There's a shadow space in us that we have to do. You understand? So you cannot have the light without the dark, and vice versa. Because the sun and the moon, they play off of each other. They have a role. This is a new moon today. You understand? It's a new moon for us today. And so this is an opportunity for you to be setting intentions right now. And so what happens is we set intention after intention after intention after intention. And so then we have an entitlement. Well, God didn't give it to me. His spirit didn't give it to me. It didn't manifest. It didn't come. It didn't do this. Well, but the difference between an affirmation and an intention is there's some action that's required. And we cannot keep on saying we're going to do things and we don't do it, because guess what happens? You stop believing in your own word. You don't trust your own self. And that is why many of you did not show up to learn the anatomy of prayer, because many of us only have a relationship, and the class is still happening tomorrow, by the way, but many of us only have a relationship with prayer based on crises. We only pray when we're in crisis. You understand what I'm saying? So our relationship with God is emergency management. Our relationship with God is sheltering in place, taking cover. That is not the goddess. The goddess is in full possession of herself, her dark and her light, her strengths and her weaknesses, her threats and her opportunities. And so when you start moving into ownership, you must do a SWOT, SWOT, analysis of yourself. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my opportunities? And baby, what are my threats? That is the place of ownership, moving it out of entitlement, that the preacher is going to do it, that the altar call is going to do it, that if I take just one more, if I go get in proximity to their wealth, that it's just going to spill on me. I don't want no spillover, God darn it, gonna make me cuss. But after we own it, then we can decide what we're gonna do with it. After we own it, we can decide whether it's an investment. You dig what I'm saying? We're gonna am I gonna leave it as an inheritance, or do I want to remodel this thing? Lord have mercy. Am I going to put it in a trust? And then after we own it, the enrichment part of it now, when there's a certain place where there's a tipping point, but many of us can't even get to the tipping point. We won't get to the tipping point because we stop. We own the breakdown. But we don't look for the breakthrough. So I'm going to close on that because I feel like I gave you some tools. I'm going to just tell you, I promise you, I start off every time saying I'm just going to be easy with that thing today. But I thank the ancestors. I'm telling you, because when we can break spells on us, when we begin to break the spells in our individual, our families, our communities, and then the collective, when then we become the witch, if you will, but not the witch, the witch that people are afraid of. We become the priestess of our households that begin to say WHICH. Which thing am I going to believe? Which thing am I going to manifest? Which thing, what choice do I have? I have a choice. And when I feel like I don't have a choice, I always have a choice. So I'm going to close out, my loves. I'm going to close out. I promised Kristen. She was the first person in the space. And the card that I pulled today for you, beloved, was sanctuary. Sanctuary. The message of that card is, in my inner sanctuary, I connect to peace, inner quietude, and comfort. My inner sanctuary is a place that is both holy and holy. I love that. It's spelled Holy and WHOLLY within the center of my being. I visit here throughout my day. Wasn't I just talking about that? Whenever I want to connect to stillness, inner quietude, and comfort, or when I want to savor gratitude for those things that bring me happiness and fulfillment. The key is to be still and train my attention to come back to my body and find my center, my inner holy land. God, I love it when things read like that. Sometimes I experience my inner sanctuary within my heart. Other times I find it deep within my belly. And sometimes my inner sanctuary surrounds me with an auric gossamer of energy, wrapping me in a cozy cocoon of light. Wherever I find my inner sanctuary is the place where infinite possibilities exist. Now, I gave that message because Kristen was the first person on today. So, of course, it probably has meaning for her. But Lord have mercy, I just been saying for the last month, I cannot make this stuff up. I can't make it up. I just can't make it up because it's not mine. It's only all spirit. I love you all. I thank you for coming in and sharing your time with me today. The Anatomy of Prayer for Manifestation class is tomorrow. If you still like to join, I'll come back and add the link right up here. bit.ly/MyGspot. My G Spot. And that class is only $29, baby. For those of you who register, once it goes out, it will not be $29. So the subscription amount is a monthly subscription for us to go into strategy. It's one thing to come in here and teach and to engage, but it's another thing to actually go into strategy. And so my intention for creating this is to meet people where they are and to help to support people to maintain where they started. Because many a times we don't maintain it. So if you can subscribe to Essence, if you can subscribe to Ebony, if you can subscribe to Baller Alert, hell, I don't know. Some of y'all be subscribing to Boots and Shoes and all of that kind of things. Then you ought to be able to subscribe to yourself. And so for yourself and for strategies for your love, sex, and money. I love you.